let's talk about choosing the right fabric for you and your comfort level in doing counted cross stitch. There are so many different choices and things available across the globe for you to find, and many in different price points. I am a sustainable stitcher, which means I am very frugal and thrifty with some of the fabric that I find and I select. Fabric come in all different price points, and you can get small pieces up to yards and yards of fabric, depending on the size, style, dye lot, you name it, there are reasons for your fabric. I just want to show you some examples from my own personal collection of fabric and things to think about and consider. And another thing with choosing fabric is that your needle will need to be larger or smaller depending on the fabric that you choose. And as we go, we can talk about that. As always, stitch with what you feel comfortable with. There are no rules in cross stitch other than having fun. Here we go. The iconic Charles Craft tube of fabric. Just know that if you see this tube, it's probably Charles Craft. Back in the day, they had the Aida packets, and this is specifically to stitch a bread cover. That's right, stitching a design that you would put your bread in on your dining table. Here is an Aida, it's an 18 count Aida, and it's in a color called cobblestone, and it was packaged away in plastic here. If you're feeling like stitching a really big piece, you could always get yourself a cross stitch Afghan. Yes, yes. You want to stitch a blanket? Say you don't like that color. You could always overdye this. Yes, you can. You can transform your colors. What do I mean by that? Well, I had a less than desirable color. It was like a yellow, like a color yellow. And I dyed it, and you can see the spots because I want it to look perfectly imperfect and not uniform. So I overdyed this according to the package instructions. And then I started stitching my flamingo using 4 strands of Hello Shimmer Sulky. Then I used a blended here 2 strands of the Hello Shimmer with 1 strand of the 12 weight. Playing around with texture and depth on fabric. Another thing, this is a Zweigart fabric, and it's a 20 count Lugana fabric. And I stitched this little bird also with Sulky. This came in a sample pack of fabric from the company. I rolled it, attached my little sewing pins, and tested out the color on the sky blue. Here, this is called a fiddler's cloth. This is fiddler's cloth Aida. Again, I used a Sulky blendable 1 strand over 1 hole around. And with these blendables, you're gonna wanna finish your stitch. So you're gonna do 1x at a time to make sure that you keep that variegation going. So this is a fiddler's cloth. It's got this interesting look to it. Here is a traditional, already dyed piece of 18 count Aida. And look, I might have already used some. I also went ahead and you don't need a serger, but many recommend a serge. Serge your edges so you avoid this fraying. If you don't have a serger, I did a zigzag stitch just to help with the fraying. As a sustainable stitcher, very thrifty, I cannot let one single little piece go to waste. I had this tiny little piece, so I designed this, and it's gonna get turned into a drum. What does that mean? Well, here's my design. It's gonna fold over. Then I'm gonna use the Sulky translucent thread to stitch this piece down after it's been pressed and there's an interface added. And this will be turned into a drum. This is on a 16 count fiddler's cloth Aida. This is a custom small batch piece of dyed 18 count Aida. And this dyer serged those edges. Do you see those edges? Nice and serged. Marked the size of the piece, the count, the type of fabric. This was serged down nicely to minimize fraying, and look at that color. Isn't that gorgeous? There are so many options out there you can find online for overdyed custom colors. If you can dream it, it can probably be made for you. Again, budget allowing. Here is a piece, the rest of the fuchsia pink that I overdyed myself, that I used to create my unicorn in a wishing well. I wrote down my recipe, so hopefully I could replicate it. Here is a piece, a scrap piece that I got from a local needlework store. This is called a mystery fabric, meaning I don't know who made it. I don't know what color it is. I just have a little piece of it. But that count is a larger count. If you like shimmer, just know there is fabric out there for you. This is a shimmer piece, again, sample from a local needlework shop with the built-in metallic threads already there, and it's dyed to perfection. A mermaid, some sort of nautical stitch would look amazing on this fabric. And finally, another piece that I dyed for a large piece, or I could cut it up for smaller ornaments, pin cushions, or scissor fobs. I want to show an example of stitching on perforated plastic. This is a 14 count perforated plastic. It is malleable, meaning look, I can wash it and I can stitch on it. There's also perforated paper that you can stitch on, but I like the perforated plastic because I don't want to break anything. I stitched this using a 26 count needle with 2 strands of Sulky Petites. I used the same color palette here as I did on my pattern that I stitched on linen. I can then go through and cut this out and add this as a 3-dimensional aspect to my finishing piece. I tested out making a little strawberry. It gives a 3-dimensional component stitched with 2 strands of Sulky, which is the equivalent of 4 strands of traditional embroidery floss. At one of the brick and mortar needlework shops, I got a sample piece of fabric. This particular shop, the smallest piece that they will cut is a 9" by 9" of their custom overdyed coffee tea stained fabric. Now this is not color fast. For people stitching historic samplers, and boy oh boy, are historic samplers just the cat's pajamas. I fell down deep into the sampler rabbit hole and I haven't gotten out since. And yes, Sulky's colors I translated into a sampler piece. Oh, perfection. Again, 32 count. Something to keep in mind as well. Some of these start out the blank before they're overdyed as a 32 count or 28, 40 count. Do you know some fabrics go up to 56 and higher? Oh, 56 threads per inch. They start out that way, but through the process of overdying, some fabric companies, they'll actually contract, meaning that it started as a 32 count, but by the time it's been overdyed, pressed, and ready for you to stitch on, it might be a 36 count because it's contracted. Just be aware of that. Fabric company A might have a 32 count that looks like fabric company B's 36 count. And with that, here's another R&R Reproductions fabric. This is the color Abercedarian. Many times the shops will mark the size, the count, and the color. The edges have all been serged to minimize fraying. And you would buy a piece like this typically for a large stitch project. Leave 3" margin and stitch to your heart's content. I hope that some of my fabric collection inspires you to go and contact your local needlework shop or online retailer to find the perfect fabric for you. If you don't know what you like to stitch on, meaning you don't know if you like linen or Aida or even weave, or you feel very overwhelmed, my suggestion is to start with 14 count Aida fabric and then go from there. I personally, with Sulky, love fuller coverage of my strands of thread, so I would recommend at least a 16 count Aida or 18 count Aida to get that full coverage of your strands. You need to be comfortable and enjoy your stitching. You don't want to invest a whole lot of money in something and find out you don't like it. For instance, this piece of fabric, this costs considerably more than this piece of fabric. I paid less than $5 for this sample of custom overdyed. I can use this to stitch a small piece, an ornament, what have you. I don't have potentially a $30 investment in a linen fabric. And yes, fabric is expensive, but fortunately, you invest in Sulky, you get one of these, like these big packs here. This will last you a long time. What an affordable option for stitching, convenient. I feel like my stitching has gotten faster and more efficient using Silky products because I'm not fiddling with skeins, I'm not having loose threads all over the place. I can put everything together. I don't feel like I'm buried in lost floss. I feel like I have embarked on this beautiful journey with Sulky for faster stitching. It's affordable. The colors are beautiful. I can stitch beautiful things on clothing and it's washable. I could stitch things on overdyed that isn't washable and it still looks fantastic. I highly recommend Silky products. I cannot tell you enough how much it has changed my life, my stitching, and my design ideas for now and for the future. Again, I'm stitching on plastic and I'm also reproducing 16th century filet lace patterns and 19th century samplers. The possibilities are endless. And you can also stitch kitschy stuff, subversive stuff. The possibilities truly are endless. The only thing that will inhibit you is your budget and your imagination. I appreciate you. I appreciate Sulky. Have a wonderful time stitching.